This special edition of EdTech Monday Africa is brought to you by the MasterCard Foundation Center for Innovative Teaching and Learning in ICT and MasterCard Foundation Young Africa Works.
Hello and glad you're watching the November edition of EdTech Monday Africa. My name is Joy Doreen Bira, holding fort for Julie Gishuru this month. EdTech Monday is a brainchild of the MasterCard Foundation Center for Innovative Teaching and Learning in ICT. The center works to close the gap in access to quality education to advance the integration of technology in education policies and practices across Africa. On the show, we focus on getting to the root to strengthen science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, also known as STEM. An African Development Bank report shows that less than 25% of African higher education students are in STEM fields. And despite being home to 17% of the world's population, Africa's science, technology, engineering, and math capabilities fall behind the rest of the world. STEM education is a driver of economic performance and is essential for helping growing economies compete in the global market, create jobs, and improve wealth. The MasterCard Foundation's 2020 Secondary Education in Africa report argues that to respond to the trends and challenges shaping the future of work, young people need fundamental literacy and numeracy skills, 21st century skills, digital skills, and skills and knowledge in the STEM fields, which underpin innovation and are excellent vehicle for developing critical thinking and problem-solving abilities. The question is, how do we ensure more young people are able to access STEM training, and what role does technology have to play in making STEM learning more widely available? And to help us break this all down are our panelists, Rita Clemens Mutabazi, Principal of IPRC Tumba, which is the Integrated Polytechnic Regional College of Tumba, and is an institution that is key in fostering ICT and renewable energy use. She's also a Tech Women Fellow and winner of the Women in Science Award in Rwanda. Parthi Chetty, Executive Director, Expo for Young Scientists in South Africa, where students have a chance to show others their projects about their own scientific investigations. And Apiwe Hotele, founder, Enlighten Edu, a progress tracking and diagnostic software for learners that integrates tutors and learners as well. She is also the winner of several awards. And so let's get this conversation started. And I would like to start with each and all of us. And to start with, Apiwe, what are the root causes for the very low uptake we're seeing and interest in STEM by African students? Also, how has been your experience in mitigating or some of the programs that you've put in place to improve that?
Thank you so much, Joy Doreen, and thank you for having me. First of all, I think the key problem here is that a lot of learners view STEM, or let me rather say maths and science, as a subject for an elite few. And a lot of learners struggle to see themselves doing STEM. And I think this is the key problem that lies within a lot of learners not doing STEM. And I almost want to say it's a mindset issue. A lot of learners almost cannot see themselves doing STEM. That is the first thing. The second one, I think STEM is abstract. So a lot of learners struggle because you can study, maths and science, but you can be many things afterwards. There are many careers that you can do from maths and science. So a lot of learners then struggle to sort of like see themselves and know exactly, once I've studied STEM, this is exactly what I'm going to do. Unlike, for example, with accounting. When you do accounting, as much as there are a lot of vast careers in there as well, but a lot of learners know that you are going to be an accountant at the end of the day. With STEM, it's not the same. You can be a medical doctor, you can be an engineer, and so on and so forth. I think the other thing is that I know, at least from South Africa, we've got a lot of learners have to, after school, they have to get assistance from their parents and so on and so forth. A lot of these parents are illiterate. So this is also one of the problems, that a lot of learners, when they come back from home, they actually struggle to find assistance. And this is sort of like where the root of Enlighten came from, is that a lot of learners from, when they get back home, their parents are unable to assist them with mathematics and science, because they themselves never studied the subject in the first place. So I think these, combination of things sort of like are at the center, in my view, of what could be causing a low uptake in STEM in Africa.
All right, let me hear from Rita.
Thank you. Thank you, first of all, for giving me the opportunity. The lack of the relevance of the curriculum in the context of Africa, it's a major hindering issue whereby, yes, you learn science, yes, you do mathematics, but how do you see that applicable to your usual life? How do you combine that and make sure that this is really talked to what I could do in life, as she said? If you have a teacher who is inspiring, who knows how to deliver that course, that will make it easy for the learners from the young age going up front to love and study STEM. How do we teach STEM? You will find that many courses of STEM, they require huge investment. They require infrastructure, they require technology that is advanced, and yet you are trying to teach it as just a matter of fact. And the student will end up by learning that for getting marks. They want to really focus on the practical side. They want to develop solutions. They want to be innovative. The lack of interest takes away the creativity and so forth and so on.
It almost feels like, our level of uptake in STEM is correlated to our level of development. But I want to hear from Parthi as well. What would you relate this to, or what would you attribute this to, and how can we improve it?
Hi, Joy, Doreen, and colleagues. Thanks for the opportunity. We have a large number of schools in South Africa without STEM resources. They do not have a lab. They do not have equipment. So at the same time, we also have some teachers who are not suitably qualified and competent to teach math, science, engineering, and so on. And because of circumstances, they have to teach these subjects. Now, can you imagine a learner sitting in a classroom and the teacher lacks passion? It's not easy for that learner to actually take up the sciences. So this is one of the key findings in the professional development, as well as science resources. And as pointed out by Apiwe and Rita, science seems abstract. So the problem is that it is not really something that the children get excited about. That directly impacts on the low uptake of sciences in many of our schools in South Africa. The teacher also, because of a lack of resources, they teach by demonstration method. So you have a teacher in the front of the classroom simply showing the learner how a ticker tape operates or how a chemical titration operates. The poor learner is simply observing. They are not part of it. They're not taking ownership of their education. Now, to get around that problem, we need to do things that the learner can acquire skills in the classroom and apply it outside the classroom to contextualize what they've learned. So we get away from the abstract. Simple things like Olympiads and competitions. That's a great start because the learner applies the principles in a context. Furthermore, we don't allow for the learner to follow the passion if they're sitting in the classroom. So having things like science fairs, they follow their passion. And by doing things on their own, they have the freedom to explore that. And as teachers and mentors, we need to support that. So yes, we've identified a lot of the challenges, but one of the ways to get around it is to get the children to do science, stimulate them at an early age. So when they reach high school, they are excited about science. When they reach a school leaving age, they say, right, now that I love science, I know how to do science, I know how to do research, I know how to do engineering projects, I'd like to enter a field in one of the STEM faculties. So this is how we think we can get more students into our science fields post-school.
All right. So when we look at the future of work, digitization is going to be a big part of it. And STEM is going to be critical as well to the future of work, but we are seeing very few institutions specializing in delivering STEM education. While the Mastercard Foundation supports several of these programs that aim to increase the uptake of STEM, we are still seeing some challenges. So how do we strengthen higher education institutions to deliver STEM and diversify course offerings? Because this is something that we really need to take seriously if we're going to industrialize in the future. Rita, I want to hear your perspective on this.
We need to support more. We need to support more, and that will take us, as we highlighted, to tackle the issue of infrastructure, the issue of training our trainers, getting them motivated, making sure that they are capable of delivering STEM courses, and also making sure that they are also upgraded. They know when you talk about future of work, what do they understand? How do they make sure that the previous knowledge they have is also going in line of where the future is going? A simple example, look at the COVID. We used to have a funny say that if you did your engineering courses online, they used even to put a picture highlighting someone who did engineering online and someone who did it in class in physical. Yeah. But what COVID has taught us is that we can teach and deliver engineering courses online. We can do more. So we need sure to change the mindset, and we need to make sure that we put in place the tools, the digital tools, to help our teachers, our trainers, and our academic staff to cope with. I always take an example of how the digital space has enabled anything. Yeah, you can conduct a lab, you can even access some labs somewhere and learn from there without having the constraint and the barrier of not having a physical lab. So we need to make sure that education institutions are collaborating, that they are putting in place, but they are also making available those infrastructure they have to other institutions to be able to use them, because the digital world has made it easy, and it's now you can now do a course online and feel comfortable, and even your degree is recognized. So I think I love tech, and whenever I look at the technology, I see how vast and what more we could do without thinking, yes, I'm in Rwanda, yes, I'm where, yes, I have this constraint and all that. And our academic institutions, they need to embrace that to be able to deliver.
And how easily accessible are these polytechnics, for instance, to young people? Because it's one thing to leave secondary school, but then accessing a polytechnic vocational institution is not that easy, is it, or is it?
No, it's not that. It's not that. If you take a case of Rwanda, we have 80 polytechnics across Rwanda, which are public. And most of the time, we don't even take 30% of the students who apply. So there is an interest, but again, how are we in terms of infrastructure ready to embody everyone who wish to? So the accessibility in terms of physical infrastructure is still an issue. And we believe that being online, going digital, will help us to even overcome that challenge.
All right, Party, we also need to strengthen STEM delivery at secondary school level. But what can we do to ensure young people are leaving secondary school with STEM skills that could set them up to pursue vocational training, higher education, or even enter the world of work at that level?
I think one of the first things we need to do is do a better job at primary school education, because a solid foundation will lead to secondary school learners being competent, adequately prepared for STEM subject, and develop a love for the subject, because they perceive STEM subjects to be difficult. Now we need to demystify that. We then need to educate the students about career choices and link them back to subject choices. For example, to be an engineer, you have to do mathematics at high school level. So if the students know that, they will force themselves to take those subjects, because it determines their career. We then need to educate learners about 21st century skills. This is, when we talk about the job market as well, I think it permeates all factors. These skills are not taught in school per se. A teacher doesn't say, right, in this subject, we will teach you the skills, but quite often the skills are acquired outside of the school environment. And why it's quite relevant, because our education system works on the individual. The individual works, attains a qualification all on their own, obviously with some mentorship support. Then you enter the work environment, and then your manager says, right, this is your team. You need to work with your team. Now there's a complete shift from being responsible for yourself, and now there's 3 or 4 other people, and there's team dynamics that you don't know anything about. So by acquiring these 21st century skills at the school leaving age in high school, will put these students in a much better position, and they'll be a lot more competent to address whatever challenges come the way. Because one of the key things within the 21st century skills is problem solving, critical thinking, communication. And these are very difficult to teach. So outside of the school environment, we should have opportunities for them to pursue this. Now we talk about the 4th industrial revolution. Is our curriculum preparing our learners sufficiently? And I think we are also lacking seriously in that area. So we need to relook at how the curriculum is developed and delivered at the high school level.
Apiwe, I want to come to you. Take us through your journey as a student, excelling in STEM and coming up with an innovative invention. What would you have done differently if you had the opportunity?
So I did not have a maths and science teacher from grade 10 to 12. I loved mathematics, and I think that's kind of what put me going through. And also, I was inspired by our family doctor, who, she's a female, and every time I would walk into a surgery, I'd be like, oh my gosh, this is great. So literally all the time, and she kind of, indirectly coached me into doing maths and science, because she was like, if you want to be a doctor, you do it. Little did I know at that point that, being a doctor was not necessarily my passion, but that was the closest thing I could relate to at the time. And that's where my journey essentially started. And when I finished matric, because I did not have a maths and science teacher, and I want to highlight this, that I was not going to one of the worst schools. I mean, I was born in the villages and whatever, but my parents had managed to take us to a school in the nearest town, which was also a small town. But they still had an issue with finding teachers in maths and science, adequate teachers, because a lot of the times when we talk about this, we assume that it's a problem of public schools. But actually, even other schools, also have the same problem. That's why I think it's important for me to highlight this. When I finished matric, fast forward, I did not qualify for medicine. I only managed to get a level C, having taught myself. And I was really depressed. I thought to myself, I had taught myself, nobody cared about that. The system the system practically cut me out. But little did I know that was a new journey to computer science, because I for a couple of, I think about 2 months, I said I was not going to go to school and so on and so forth. Then I used to, in front of our home, there is a community tap and there's a school. And I used to go and get water from the community tap. And literally, coincidentally, all the time I would hear students complaining about how hard mathematics is, how hard physical science is, and they want to quit and so on and so forth. At that moment, I think it sparked in me that I'm not alone. There are so many Apiwes. And that moment, I remember I called my mom and I said, I want to go to school. I don't know what I'm going to study, but I think I want to go back to university.
I'm going.
And we did. We went to the University of Fort Hare, and that's where my journey started. I did all the modules at first year, and I fell in love with computer science, and that's my journey with computer science essentially started. And I think one of the key things that I am trying to do differently more than anything is to make sure that there's more accessibility, and not only in terms of, in terms of the resources, but accessibility in terms of people. I think we take for granted the importance of role models. And I think, being able to identify yourself through somebody, I think that is very important. And I think that is one of the things I'm doing differently, because the first time I met an engineer or a computer scientist, because I studied computer science and then did my master's in computer engineering, was in the workplace. I had never met an engineer before. And that is the problem, because we look at these careers and we think they are not for us. They are for people that are there, white people and so on, and people from different big cities and so on, not for us from smaller cities. And that's essentially what I'm trying to do. Number one is to make sure that, people on the ground are aware of Apiwe. Apiwe is a computer scientist. Apiwe is a female. And Apiwe is trying to make a change, so that they can see me and identify themselves through me. And then with Enlighten Edu, I think it essentially, I like to say to people, it started in grade 12 when at that point when I realized that I didn't have a teacher, and I realized that there were so many of us that had this problem. And then I think the inspiration was also drawn from my parents. My parents are educators themselves, and literally all the time when it's, around this time, actually, they're going to have a pack of marking to do. And my mom's got a class of, I think, about 67 learners. And it always puzzled me that how is she supposed to help each and every learner in class, if she's got a class that big? And that's where the invention with Enlighten started, was where, how about I create a platform that assists teachers, because where we have extensive, use analytics to monitor the progress of the learner, and this is given to the teacher, so that the teacher is able to look at a class of 49 learners and be able to tell that from these learners, it seems like the actual problem that they're struggling with is this, and therefore the teacher can then, structure their curriculum in a manner that, is good enough for the classroom, as opposed to assuming based on what is going on in the classroom.
What's needed to ensure that we prioritize STEM, especially in Africa, given Apiwe's experience talking about the fact that we need more role models, we also need more career guidance. How is Rwanda going about increasing STEM uptake among young people? Are there any unique lessons that we can pick from Rwanda for the rest of Africa?
Thank you. I think Rwanda is doing well. Of course, challenges across are quite same, but if I talk about what Rwanda is doing, for instance, we embodied from the primary up to higher learning institutions, we reviewed our curriculum to make it more STEM-based and more localized, if I may say, having a practical-oriented teaching and learning. And that has been really a revolution, if I may say. If I take an example, when I joined the Polytechnic, the kind of a curriculum we used to have that was just assessing the knowledge, not the know-how, how to do things, and looking at the competences and the skills gotten, I could see that we have really, at least on the issue of the curriculum, we are doing well. So, we talked about all the curriculum all along, all of us, we made it an issue. So if you, again, I look at how the ICT, the STEM and ICT is being mainstreamed across the education system from the primary up to the higher learning institutions, where I know maybe where, Rwanda was famous in terms of one laptop per child from the primary, and even the higher learning institution where every learner had the laptop, and we are now going on the part of the trainer, let's say the teacher laptop, one laptop per teacher, a kind of, and this is making sure that the learners and the teachers have access to ICT, and they can do more beyond just the physical infrastructure constraint. And if you look at how the government has made it clear that if you are a higher learning prospective student and you are looking at getting to university or a polytechnic, you are almost 100% sure that we get a student loan than anyone taking arts or any other courses, non-STEM courses. And this has also been, I think, a motivation to more students wanting to join STEM courses, because they know they will be given a loan and they will be assisted during their learning process. Something else, if you look at the infrastructure wise across the country that are supporting ICT, you will also, let's say now all our polytechnics are connected to fiber, and yes, the internet issue may be there, but at least the infrastructure are laid on, and everyone has access to internet. And we are trying, the key challenges that we are having now, it's how do we make the STEM courses, let's say in Polytechnic, where the technical part is very crucial, how do we make sure that we have the digital content that support the learning and teaching across all the way.
Party ESCOM Expo for Young Scientists has been one of the most prolific and successful science fairs for pre-college students. And while Rita has talked about how government is prioritizing and making sure that every child has a laptop or every teacher has a laptop, you know, it's another thing to see the interest being picked up by these young people. So how do you see the role of a science fair in not only nurturing interest in STEM, but also creating further opportunities for young Africans? Is there a place that science fairs play in making sure that this interest is driven?
Thanks, Joy Doreen. Absolutely. I mean, we've been doing this for 41 years, and that is why we keep going. So a key thing is what Expo for Young Scientists does, like most science fairs, it provides a platform. So the learner applies what they learned in the classroom in a science fair environment. The second important point, and Apiwe touched on that, is when these learners present the projects, they are judged by university and industry experts. So if Apiwe was presenting a project at a science fair, she would have met an engineer while still at school. And it has an impact because they don't just judge the project, but they motivate the learners and they give them some guidance into which kind of fields they should pursue. And they could tell them in the next 5 years, this is the kind of scientists or engineers we're looking for. So it has a huge impact by bringing these real scientists and engineers to the schools and to judge these projects. And we develop a mentorship kind of opportunity. So this is the first point, because most of our learners, especially in the townships, they only come across a teacher, a doctor, a policeman, a social worker. They don't meet real scientists. And they think a real scientist is somebody in a white coat, gray head. Now look at the two ladies on this call, yourself included. All you guys are involved in STEM, but you are ladies, you are role models. But the township learner doesn't see you guys as scientists. So we got to show them what a real scientist is. And that goes a long way to motivate them. The science fair allows learners the latitude to experiment. They develop their own projects and nobody tells them it's right or wrong because they do the research and they prove to the judge, according to my research, this is my finding. So it really brings out that intrinsic motivation, which is seriously lacking in many learners.
So having received Science Leadership Awards in recognition of your dedication to promoting science among women and girls in Rwanda, Rita, I want to hear, how do we ensure more girls take up STEM?
First, I believe that we should create a strong STEM pipeline from the area age, from, let's say, I don't know, from a nursery, if countries have that, from home and everywhere, because when they are given opportunity at a young age, it's the moment where they haven't had the issue of internalizing how you are not able to do so and so, or to be not an engineer. Just they are dreaming, and the kids naturally, they are engineers, they are solvers, they do experiment. That's their way of playing. So if we make sure that we create a strong STEM pipeline from area age, and we make sure that we expose them to role models, as Apiwe said, it's so funny how when I became the first whatever. And I always told the girls that it's not because I am the only one being the first, it's because I was given an opportunity. And looking at them, how they are so happy to have a role model who does this and that, it was so inspiring and really made me to think of not going back rather than calling more women to make sure that we make this our call, making sure that the girls know that Rita, she's an engineer, so-and-so is a scientist, so-and-so is doing math, so-and-so is doing ABCD. And also making sure that we make sure our education is gender sensitive. I always say this because if you are teaching a boy, if you are making a lab in a scientific lab and there are men and women around or girls and boys around, many will tend to just grab things and start doing things with such a confidence. Girls will tend just to step back and let the men lead across and watching. And this takes away the way they learn because they think, okay, it can be done, but I'm not the one doing it.
Apiwe, you founded Breaking the Stereotype, a movement whose aim is to support, motivate, and encourage females studying science and engineering at institutions of higher learning to reduce the attrition of females in this field. So what led you to even start this, and what impact has it so far had?
First of all, I think I am tired of being the only female in the room. I am tired of being the first of whatever, because I think at this day and age, I like what Rita was saying, when she says, it's not that I am the only one, but it's just that I was given a platform to speak, and the others were not. And I think this is quite important. What led me to starting #Breaking the Stereotype again leads to my own personal story. When I started studying computer science on our first year, there were so many of us. There were many females. And as time went by, only 3 of us graduated at the end of the year. At the end of the degree, when we completed our degree. And this is not even to say the other females failed. By the time we reached, 3rd year, we were already 3. All the other girls had already left, and I was not sure what had happened somewhere along the line, but somehow they were gone. And I started noticing that this was not only a thing in our class, but it was also a thing, as time went by, I would notice that first year, there are many females. And what this taught me is a lot of the times we say, maybe students are not motivated to do so and so on. But my thing is they registered. They did first year, which means they were interested to do so. They were qualified to do so. Otherwise, the institution wouldn't have, accepted them. So there is something that happens in the pipeline that leads to us losing these girls. And that's why I started #Breaking the Stereotype. We have what we call #venting sessions. So what I try to do is every venting session, we have a topic that we're going to talk about. The last one we had last week, actually, and we were talking about when my lecturer said, whatever, this told me or led, this made me feel like I was not involved in STEM. The previous time we spoke about imposter syndrome. And I think what is great about #Breaking the Stereotype is that it brings a community of women in STEM that have made it, and young girls that are still within university. And together they form this coalition, and we start talking about authentically sharing our stories. And I like to say this because it's very important. A lot of the times when as I'm standing here today, I'm talking about all the great things that I've done as Apiwe, but I'm actually not sharing what has taken to me getting to where I am. And I think that is the most important thing, because a lot of the times when girls are going through what Apiwe went through, they tend to think maybe it's me, I'm not good enough, or something along those lines. Meanwhile, it's actually something that we've all gone through.
So if you allow me, what impact has this movement had in terms of increasing the interest of STEM among young people, girls, boys, young women, and men?
Yeah, so thank you so much. So this year was actually the first time we had venting sessions. We started it at the beginning of this year. We've seen I think at this moment, I'm sitting at about 5 or 6 girls that wanted to leave, that were like, they got into the call and were like, I don't think STEM is for me. I don't think this degree is for me, doing various degrees in engineering and science. And through sharing these stories, and these girls have become more confident, and they've realized that it's not a thing that I'm only going through, but it's also a thing that other women are also going through. And I think with time, this is going to grow as we reach more and more girls.
Okay, let me hear from Party shortly, because in terms of involving girls and women in STEM, I think it's not just an issue of what women think can be done. We also need to hear from you regarding this briefly before we can wrap this up.
Oh, thanks for that. I'm glad we've touched on some critical issues, and we see a move where a lot more women are getting involved in STEM. What we do at Expo for Young Scientists, we set a target that the minimum participation, we must have a minimum of 50% girls participating in Expo, and we exceed the target every year. So we go out and we encourage girls to participate. Quite often, they feel it's a boy's domain, being a scientist or an engineer. We must dispel that. I would take Apiwe and Rita, and I will ask them to go and talk to the girls. They don't want to see me talking about getting girls. They want to see a girl that looks like them, talks like them, comes from a similar environment, and has made it into university and is now a scientist or an engineer. So we focus on getting those role models in front of these girls. And we have a mentorship program. So we do have many women who are undergraduates that have a cohort of students that they work with. And we ensure, now if a girl sees another lady as a mentor, they would attend. They won't feel intimidated. So we get a lot of girls involved, and we have up to 59% female participation in all our activities. And firstly, the girls must be, we must stress to the fact that they can be anything they want to be. There is no job or career that is set aside for men. And if they believe in themselves, we are there, and there's many organizations there to help our girls to get there.
All right. I like these views, because at the end of the day, what we need is seeing all our young people thriving, no matter their gender. And also, as we bring this to a close, how can education technology support the work of governments, teachers and learners to improve and encourage STEM education for learners? Because I think it's critical and important that we also see the government being involved in policy making as well as implementing policies to help increase the uptake of STEM. I'm going to start with Party.
I think especially during lockdown has taught us a lot. Talking about the technology, if it wasn't for technology, we wouldn't be on this call. Our learners wouldn't have completed an academic year. We would have had huge failure rates. So it taught us to repurpose our material. We had to develop a lot of online videos. So learners who were stuck at home during lockdown had to use technology to be able to access material. So technology was really an enabler in the environment of lockdown, and we're still currently in lockdown, to kind of level the playing fields. So it is key. And I think going forward, when you mentioned the role of government should learn from what we've experienced now. Government should realize we can do a lot more remote teaching, remote learning, online classes. We close the digital divide by government having to put more technology into schools. And it's also important that the teachers are equipped. So government needs to ensure that it's not just about technology and connectivity. The teacher who is, the expert in facilitating needs to be suitably prepared to engage with the so-called classroom of the future, which we actually are experiencing right now.
All right. So a lot of artificial intelligence support as well needs to be done from the government side. Apiwe, I want to hear from you as well in terms of, if you had to talk to the government, or if some government officials are watching and listening to us right now, what would you say to them?
Thank you, Joy Doreen. I think, first of all, I would say that, our government needs to stop lip syncing when we're talking about ICT and 4IR, and actually start doing something, because I think we're all talking about it, but there's not much that is being done, around it, So I think, for example, one of the things that I think technology could play a big role in is that in South Africa at the moment, we've got a one-size-fits-all approach to a lot of things, especially when it comes to education. And I think this does not work, especially because we've got township, rural, towns. These are extremely different. And the way of teaching and so on is completely different. I'm going to make an example of how the government, if they would get, allow technology to be used. For example, I'm going to make an example with Enlighten Edu, for example. With the data that we've collected from Enlighten Edu, we can allow the government to start looking at the Eastern Cape and look at the Eastern Cape and say, within the Eastern Cape, these are the areas in whatever district are struggling with this. So therefore, as the government, let's come together and do this in the Eastern Cape, and then go on and look in Cape Town and so on and so forth, as opposed to us assuming that this is what is required in a particular setting. And the second thing is, we know in South Africa that we've got a serious problem with, congested classrooms. And this is where technology, again, can play a role in terms of assisting teachers with administration, lesson plans, databases, and so on and so forth, in terms of ensuring that the teachers themselves are supported. Because one of the things that makes the teachers also not be lethargic, is because there's just so much for them to do in so little time. And if we can start using technology to assist the teachers, then that would be quite great.
All right. Rita?
A lot has been said, and I totally agree with everything, and I'm learning a lot also. I think whenever technology is talked about, myself, I am like, what can be done? Because technology can do it all. It depends on what do you want to do and how do you want to do it. And that's the beauty of it. Like Apiwe is talking about the administration side, and in terms of assisting teachers, and Patti was talking about how to make accessible the running materials and making sure that they collaborate and they have access to what they couldn't have if the physical infrastructure were considered. And I think we need to also to decolonize our minds of how the STEM and the digital world has been linked. I think I gave you an example of how they used to say a degree online and a degree in physical, and that could already take away the beauty of the technology. Or like, okay, if I'm learning online, I can't make it. So I think we should ask ourselves, what do we want to do with the technology and how could do it? And many young ones, and they are innovators. They have a lot of crazy ideas on things they want to do. And I think the government should be able to support such kind of mindset, creating environment and the frameworks that make sure that those innovative ideas, those things that we are waiting of, the future of anything, they are being supported and they are being implemented just to change the things that we thought couldn't be changed.
Which is pretty much the government's role, really, to create an enabling environment for everyone else to partake and implement and work, or allow also the private sector as well to thrive. So I want to say thank you. This has been a really good discussion, insightful discussion, one that we can carry forward and implement for positive results. So big thank you to Apiwe Hotele, who is the founder of Enlighten Edu, and also Patti Chatty, who is the executive director for the ESCOM Expo for Young Scientists in South Africa, and also Rita Clemens Mutabazi, the principal of the Integrated Polytechnic Regional College of Tumba in Rwanda. Thank you all so much for making this discussion all the more worthwhile. You can find this and all editions of EdTech Monday on the Mastercard Foundation's Young Africa Works Facebook page, and also on CNBC Africa. You can also find more of these discussions on Mastercard Foundation's YouTube channel. I'm Joy Doreen Bira. Enjoy the rest of your viewing.